Welcome to the Content Amplified podcast, brought to you by Masset. Our goal is to help you get more from your marketing content. Each episode is a 10 to 15 minute interview with industry experts that share amazing insights to help you squeeze as much juice from your content as you possibly can. Here's today's interview.
Welcome back to another episode of Content Amplified. Today I'm joined by Justin. Justin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Ben. Very nice to be here, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, you bet. Justin, I'm excited for the conversation today. I think you have a really rich background to really educate us on this specific subject. So let's get to know you. We always ask, what do you love about marketing and content? And then kind of give us your background and a little bit of your history.
What I love about marketing and content is exactly what I do with it is research. That's probably the best thing to say. My background, I think the background helps first to put context to this, but I've been in equity research for 5.5 years, working for a small cap broker dealer covering very small consumer names, consumer media names. Spent 5.5 years doing that. I switched over to the primary research world, where essentially that's a way for the investment community to get access to industry experts and executives to get better information about what's going on within particular areas and industries and spaces and names and all different sorts of things like that. I spent 5.5 years with that organization conducting 1-hour conference calls with industry experts, where it would be myself and another very high level, very smart person going over particular areas of either the consumer industry or various parts of, technology, things like that. I spent 5.5 years there, after which I had a brief stint with a PR and media outlet for a really, really brief time. And then I got I thought I hung up the guns and the boots and got the call back to come work with BWG Strategy, where we conduct very similar types of conversations from primary research perspective. However, our goal is to put like-minded and similar industry folks in a room together virtually and have a robust conversation about what's going on within their particular verticals or industries. So whether it be search, social, linear TV, CTV, retail media, gaming, you name it, all different sorts of walks of life of the media industry, for folks to come coalesce, enjoy a richer conversation about what's happening while our clientele consume that information silently while the conversation is going on. So it's a really good platform for folks to network, find out what other folks within their industry are doing and be able to converse with them, and then learn. It's a great learning platform. I've had countless times where folks come back to me and say, no matter what, on any of these conversations, I always walk away with something, right? I'm always walking away with some sort of piece of information.
And this is amazing because I think that there is a really powerful discussion because you have such rich experience about collecting research and using that to really empower people. And so many marketers are focused on content creation and making content that it's often difficult to develop the skills of doing research and learning and doing those things. So today we're going to dive into educational content. And Justin, I have a million questions for you, but really off the get-go, for anyone who's looking at creating educational content, you mentioned just like the different formats for collecting it, but what are your recommendations for someone who wants to learn how to do better at actually collecting the research and getting the primary data? You talked about primary research. How do you get into that, and what do you do to actually start collecting those insights?
Everybody has their own KPIs, right? Everybody's got their indicators of what success looks like. And they may be bespoke to your own organization, or they may be something that's more generally accepted as a principle within your space. On the latter side of the equation, those are the things that I think you need to harp on and attach to the most, because it's a language. You have to understand how to speak this language. And, for all intents and purposes, understanding that level of granularity within performance indicators helps you kind of understand really what the health of everything is at this point. If you looked at things, over the course of a quarter, from the start to the end, you can get a very interesting picture of how things progressed over the course of 3 months. Look at it from a year ago, you can get a very better, clearer picture about how this quarter performed against, maybe one of your worst or maybe one of your best. From there, you can slice and dice. Well, what did we do differently? And what did the market do differently? Then you can kind of get a clearer picture. But I think the best way for anybody who's looking at this and saying to themselves, how do I truly understand what's going on? How do I understand what my pulse check or what my health of what's going on is without understanding, okay, what are my oxygen levels? What is my blood pressure? What is my, what's going to keep me running at full capacity or keep me in stride? So indicators, performance indicators that the industry is best aligned with, understanding that first and foremost is gold. That'll take you to the next step of understanding, okay, so who within the industry is really aligned with this? Whether it's personnel, reports, areas of interest or research, when you can start to latch on to what those, either outlets or reports are really kind of focused on, then you can kind of get a better sense of okay, how are people utilizing this information? What are they doing to analyze this and sort of pull out actual drivers or pull out the actual thematic areas and pieces that really kind of help paint what a picture looks like? One of the common things that I often, and I think being in my seat is very interesting, is you get very micro levels of views. Someone who's, headlong in social and understands the landscapes of Snap, Meta, Pinterest, Reddit, Twitter, whatever, to somebody else who really understands the TV landscape and the shift between linear and streaming and how that's going. And then you can kind of pull out and then you can see okay, what exactly is happening? If we're really in the weeds, what does the game of Risk look like when you pull your head out of the actual map and see what's going on? A lot of times our platform helps put a lot of that context together in interesting ways. But I'll leave it there in terms of if we have anything else to harp on for that.
Yeah, I love that. That's amazing. So I love how you're looking at the KPIs and how does that drive really the heartbeat and the pulse of the industry and what's going on there. And then that leads you to subject matter experts and everything going on there. And I'm sure we could dive in way more into how to collect this research. When you do collect research, when you do have those KPIs and those insights and those people, how do you turn it into content? How do you turn it into something that can be consumed, that's actually engaging to read, that's actually pulling those insights out for the audience? What do you do there?
Yeah, and it boils down to a lot of really good things, because you can think about it from a lot of different perspectives of where the information is coming from. Major CPG, huge agency, something like that, or even smaller agencies for that matter, smaller brands. All of it amalgamates into something that's really powerful, really interesting, and really consumable. I think when you level the playing field and see from a perspective of this is the caliber of the content and this is how robust the change is, I think you get a really good picture of how this is. But it all has to be laid out in a manner for people to really be able to consume it in very digestible and very entertaining ways, because the last thing you really want to do is be reading yet another textbook on ROI. It needs to be fun, or not just fun, but electric. It needs to really show things. Without the context of how the data is impacting the industry and the drivers that really are pushing the medium forward, I think all you just get is numbers. You just get number soup, right? And you kind of have to make heads or tails of it. But that's where an organization like ours, or numerous trade organizations out there, really shine, is when they say, hey, the data says that we've seen, X% growth in these particular channels or categories. Why do we think that that's the case? Well, number one, this is what people said. This is what your peer group has said this. And number two, parsing all of that language together, we can get a better, clearer picture of, yes, we do align with a lot of what has been said here, although, or in conjunction with other market moving factors, right? It's about doing your own homework as well to kind of get a better picture of the actual landscape. But first and foremost, the data has to be shown in a digestible manner, a very clear, digestible manner. That's why we always use our stipulation is always like from a year-over-year perspective, right? That gives you a really good instance of like, where were you a year ago today? Better, worse, the same, flat? I think one other thing that's really important that doesn't get a lot of, let's call it like airtime or play within a lot of reports is, how does this relate to your expectations? And that's something that's really important, especially from a marketing perspective. It's really important to note because you can have a lot of people that will simply just tell you, hey, budgets were up 20%. Like, wow, that's fantastic. What drove that? Consumer demand. A little more to work with here would be fantastic. But the fact of the matter is, if you don't have the context of like, what's 20% to you? Is it meaningful? Is it minuscule? Is it help me under? Are you just starting and you're really starting to see the ramp here? Or were you already headlong and now it's starting to slow down? How does this relate to your expectations? I think that's a really important question to ask and gauge within our research. We do this holistically as a group, is kind of get this idea of like, how did this meet your expectations? Was this in line with what you were thinking, or did this just completely blow things out of the water? And that provides for a really good conversation piece. I think one of the other things that helps, and I think it sets us apart from other organizations, is we'll take sentiment checks. You could sit there and say, like, well, what does that exactly mean? I think for us, it's always a matter of like scale of 1 to 10. 1 super cautious, 10 is optimistic. How do you feel about what's going on within the industry? How do you feel about kind of putting a number on the health of how things are going, or where they're necessarily going? And that kind of indicates a lot of like where the market is moving, or they're more optimistic about where the market is moving. And I think that really kind of helps set a lot of the tone apart from some other research outlets that are out there. But everyone comes with their own bespoke kind of secret sauce. And I think that's something to really latch onto and keep aware of, is like, well, what is everyone's secret sauce saying? Well, what is everybody's bespoke research saying about what's going on? That helps you kind of get a better understanding of how things are really kind of materializing. And trust me, there's enough research out there for folks to kind of sit there like cross-eyed looking at this and saying like, oh, well, I don't know what to make of this. So many different, opinions and views, but you need this information to help you kind of decide how you're going to deploy, where you're going to make the investments, how you're going to be able to undertake operations and things like that.
I love that. And there's so much to unpack in that. So many cool things. I love how you're talking about the analysis over time and giving it context. You're talking about the emotional side of things and how you bring that into it. I love how you actually take qualitative, like, how do you feel about this, and turn it into quantitative metrics as well, which can be compared and can be analyzed. But really, and correct me if I'm wrong, and we're running close out of time, you feel like one of the best ways, at least this is the understanding I'm getting, and I agree with this, humanizing and actually giving some context and some personality and a viewpoint to the data is how you can make it actually consumable and understandable. Is that correct? Or how would you correct that?
1,000%. Yeah. And the fact of the matter is, so many people can come to the table with an opinion, and you can support it in a lot of really good ways. It's why we always frame the conversation as like, tell us first and foremost, how'd you perform? What did your performance look like? Tell us if the performance was in line with what you were looking for. And then lastly, what's driving it? what's the actual reason? What's the rationale for things to be going in these particular directions? Is it something that you can change, or is it something that the market is doing that you have to adapt to? And that's really kind of exactly to the point, right? Is like humanizing a lot of the actual change. That helps really educate a lot of folks who are coming into the industry to sit there and say, like, well, I deployed the campaign the way I was supposed to, and I fed the numbers into the AI algorithm, and we didn't make anything. Like the campaign failed. It's like, well, contextually, what did you do differently this time? How did you walk into this puzzle, figure out what you were going to do based on the parameters around you, and then execute? And that'll help you kind of understand going forward, okay, are other people doing something similar to this? Are others, utilizing these things in different ways? Where can I find the right information to help me execute on these particular strategies as best as possible? And again, using those KPIs to help drive a lot of that conversation will definitely set you in the right direction. And I think it's a matter of most others knowing off the bat. It's like, can you speak the language and be able to not just speak it like conversationally, but be able to put it to work? And that's the big thing I would harp on the most.
I love that. And there's so much goodness in this episode. I'm sad that we kind of have to cut it short, but Justin, this has been amazing. I am guessing there are plenty of people that have so many follow-up questions. How and where can they find you to connect?
I swim in a lot of the pools of LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn. Justin Taylor Ruiss, Ruiss is the last name. You can find me. You can reach out to me, follow anything. Happy to help. I always do a Friday post that covers a lot of our good conversation pieces and kind of re-ask that back to the community. That's where you can find me.
I love it. Well, Justin, thank you for the insights. I have learned a ton. This is one of those episodes where I think people are going to go back and re-listen to it a few times to really unpack everything. So thank you so much for all your insights and sharing, and appreciate it. Have a good one today.
Thanks for having me on, Ben.
Thank you for listening to the Content Amplified podcast. Please subscribe and leave us a review. And for additional ways to get more out of your content, visit our website at getmasset.com. That's getmasset.com. And tune in next time to the Content Amplified podcast.